without further ado, I'd like to introduce our panelists. I'm going to have them really share, Jessica's going to have them share their stories, their backgrounds, and how they got to where they are. So I will just start with, from that is right to left, so no coordination here. Joe Matoske is the editor of Vice News Tonight, and he is an Emmy Award-winning editor, currently working for Vice News Tonight. Joe is also the manager of PTV, one of the first managers, early? No?
A mid-manager.
Yeah. Well, not that you're that old or anything, but he was head of PTV for a long time. Yeah, and he did good. He did great. And also the president of PSG for a while too. So he was very well connected while he was here. So connect to different things on campus too. That's really important. After Joe speaks, we have Kyle. Sorry, Kyle Pleva.
Oh.
I'm sorry. Oh, look at here. What am I doing? Okay. So next we have Sam Zimmerman. Sam Zimmerman is a curator for AMC Shudder. AMC Networks backed Shudder, which is a streaming service devoted to horror, thrillers, and suspense. So we can't wait to hear from him. And Kyle Pleva, who came all the way from LA to come back to Purchase because he loves Purchase, and he'll tell you all about it. He currently serves as the Director of Communications at Comedy Central, one of my favorite things to watch. So without further ado, I'm going to introduce Jessica Mazzia, who's going to get the conversation started. Oh wait, I've got to thank people. Sorry, I'm thanking, you think I never did this before. Thanks to the submission for co-sponsoring our event. We have little flyers about submitting and how to get your work published and exposed on campus. And also, just to thank internship sponsors, you know, Vice News Tonight, The Real Deal, who will be here hopefully, Comedy Central, LMCTV have all sponsored internships in the past. So you might want to talk to these folks afterwards to find out what their internship process is and how do they recruit interns and whether you have a shot at that at some point. We also have a job and internship fair that's happening on March 21st at the PAC. We hope all of you go there just to explore, to connect with the different employers. There's a growing list right now, it's about 51 or 57. 57 usually gets to close to 100 employers and organizations who are looking for both summer interns, summer hires, full-time employees, consultants, all sorts of opportunities for gaining experience. So definitely you'd want to come to that. And there's also a lot of different preparatory events, how to network with employers, how to build a LinkedIn profile, all sorts of good stuff. So take advantage of our services. So without further ado, Jessica.
So just so you know the format, I'm going to kind of start off with a general question to our panelists. And then I'm going to open it up to questions. So I'm hoping you have questions. I do have other questions just in case, but really this is an event for you. So we definitely want to have your questions answered. But I'm just going to start with, if you could kind of each just introduce yourself further and just share a snapshot of what your path has been from Purchase to what you're doing now.
Sure.
And I'll start with you.
So my name is Joe Matoske. I'm currently an editor on Vice News Tonight. I graduated in 2010, and my girlfriend and I at the time moved right out to Denver. We didn't want to intern. That was kind of the path. Neither of us could afford to live in Brooklyn and do an internship. So we went out there, and I got a job at a small station called Free Speech TV. And they're probably best known for documentary Democracy Now! So we did some work with them, we did some work with Al Jazeera, and then after 4 years we came back here and I hopped around a lot of reality shows until landing at Vice about 4 years ago. And at that point I knew I wanted to work in post-production, so I became an assistant editor. And I did that for probably like 3 or 4 years before kind of finally moving up to being an editor. And that's kind of been my broad path.
Okay, great.
Yeah.
Hey, I'm Sam. I curate Shudder, which, as was mentioned, is a streaming service based around horror and thriller and all kind of cool, macabre stuff. I did some of the studies here, all along with Joe, and at the time, a friend of mine who was also in cinema studies named Logan was interning at Fangoria, which has been gone for a bit, but was sort of the legendary horror magazine And it kind of blew my mind. I was like, oh, you could do that? And she helped me get on board there where I interned. And it all sort of grew directly out of that. I interned at Fangoria, and then I was very lucky to be brought on as a contributor and then as a staff editor, and really worked there for about 6 or 7 years, going from just contributor to contributing editor, went to festivals, covered all manner of horror and the genre community, and figured out there that sort of my favorite aspect of it was supporting a lot of up-and-coming genre filmmakers, a lot of up-and-coming horror filmmakers, and how best to do that. And I figured I wanted to program. And at the time, I thought festivals might be the way to go. So I connected with friends of mine who worked at South by and Sundance and all these things. And through sort of happenstance of having these conversations, I was connected with someone at AMC Networks who was starting to build a streaming service devoted to horror. And it all felt serendipitous, but I got thrown over there, and for the past 3 years, I've been curating and building Shudder, and hopefully bringing really cool horror stuff to anyone who likes it.
Kyle Pleva from Comedy Central. I graduated in 08. I actually worked at the television station with Joe. I was the PR manager there. I stayed at Purchase for another 2.5 years. I worked at Chartwell's, believe it or not, as their marketing director before picking up and leaving New York, moving to LA with nothing, no job, no apartment, and just made it work. I started at CBS Television Studios as the publicity assistant and worked my way from there over to MTV. Spent 2 years there, and now I'm at Comedy Central heading up the West Coast publication.
Thank you. So before I ask any of my next questions, does anyone have a question? Not yet? All right, I'll ask a question. All right, so if you could just describe maybe what you did as an undergraduate to kind of prepare to enter the field, but also how did the decision come to what you wanted to do? Jim, I'll go backwards. I'll start with Kyle.
Repeat the question one more time.
So what did you do as an undergraduate to prepare to kind of enter the field? So, and then really, what was that decision to want to do what you're doing now?
I came to this school to be a dancer, believe it or not. Freshman year, I left that program halfway through freshman year and didn't know quite what I wanted to do. So I spoke with guidance counselors and stuff here, and they said, look into liberal studies. So I looked into liberal studies and continuing education program. They were so wonderful. I felt like I got to craft my own, what interested me at the time, and that's what brought me over to publicity and communications, where I got to do it at the PTV and go from there. I did some internships. I did some event internships at the Tribeca Grand and Soho Grand Hotel through the school, and everything like that is wonderful. I think you just try whatever you can and get everything you can out of the school.
I sort of knew I wanted to be involved in film in a bunch of different ways. I knew I wanted to write about it. I knew I wanted to program it. And what was great being here was, Anne, who's here, and Michelle Stewart, another wonderful professor, were very encouraging of my specific tastes in the genre and to write about it, which was nice, because I think when you grow up as like a monster kid and a horror kid, you're very used to being looked down upon in relation to academia, in relation to legitimacy of the genre. So it was very nice to be encouraged to explore that, especially as stuff like the new French Extremity was going on and Anne was teaching a contemporary French cinema class. And that was sort of just learning how to write, learning how to talk about film, learning how to move beyond just being a fan of it. And once I started to actually do that as a career, I quickly understood that even though I loved writing about it, programming it, pushing it, supporting it was more impactful and more exciting to me than just reviewing it.
Yeah. I would say for me, I was also in the cinema studies program. And when I graduated, I had no idea what I wanted to do. And I did a lot of weird film jobs to figure out what I didn't want to do. I worked as a location scout for a little bit, and I really hated it. I just hated being on set, and I thought I had made a huge mistake. But it wasn't until I started being an assistant editor that I started to see these little things that I liked doing, and I liked working with computers, and I liked figuring out the puzzle of getting all this footage together. But it wasn't until I started editing that cinema studies came back into it, and it started to feel like the best editing I was doing was when I was referencing a lot of movies that I had watched and I had learned to analyze and kind of bring into what I was trying to do. So I think it eventually kind of came full circle.
Any questions? All right, I'm gonna ask my next one. Can you talk about maybe what skills you're seeing that students maybe should start working on now? What technical and non-technical in your fields? What can they start honing now? And what they should continue to be honing? Sorry.
Yeah, I think like the best thing you can do is learn a lot of software if you're interested in editing. When I was in college, everyone was using Final Cut 7, which doesn't exist anymore. I kind of worked a little bit with Avid, and then while I was at Vice, they switched to Premiere, and they were really great, and they taught everyone how to use Premiere. Through Vice, I've learned After Effects, I've learned most of the Adobe software, but like, I think you're just always, if you want to work in post-production, you're always going to have to keep learning new software because it's all going to keep getting outdated, and that's a great resource you have right now and right here.
In some ways I would just echo that because I know so little about software or coding or tech or anything, and didn't expect to end up at a company that, is a tech company and an entertainment company. And I'm learning a lot now because I work with a product team and a design team and a developing team, and it's amazing learning from them, but I'm sure I would understand a lot more if I studied a lot more in that stuff, which I didn't. So that's very helpful. I don't know, just skills is, learn, care about what you're into. I think is the best thing to do. Just care about what you're into. Don't, I think it's easy once you sort of choose a field to get lackadaisical, even though you're supposedly that's your major, that's what you care about. But the more you're well versed in it, the more you can speak about it, the more you're confident in your knowledge of it, you can use it, subvert it, be, self-assured in it, and that will get you hopefully to the places that then you can, figure out what you want and where you want to go. And that's, once you have a strong base, you can more clearly figure out what you want, I think.
On my side, I do not work with any programs. I barely know how to turn television, but press releases are a big portion, but I don't think that's a huge skill. Anybody can write a press release. I think anybody can turn something into a press release. I think what it comes down to is interactions with people, being great with people. I work with a lot of talent, so I'm dealing with very different kinds of people, and you have to sort of acclimate yourself to their needs. And I think being in talent relations is the #1 skill to have, to show that you're confident enough and you're comfortable enough to be around them, because most of the time you spend more time with them than you do by yourself.
Absolutely. And just learning to collaborate in general.
Absolutely.
Because especially once you go into a field, I think like ours, everyone's going to come back around in a way. So if you know how to work with people, how to talk to people, how to collaborate with people, whether they're talent, whether they're colleagues, it's so much better than coming upon someone 5 years later and being like, I hated that. It's just,
yeah, I work with the marketing departments, I work with the development teams, I work with the current departments, I work with the production team. You really do, you're right. You kind of immerse yourself in this world of, you have to work with everybody. So you have to present yourself in a way that people are comfortable to work with you and make yourself stand out in that way. Somebody that they can rely on for anything.
Yeah. I would also add, I found there were a lot of people very eager to teach newer people entering the film industry. I had a lot of great people. When I started being an assistant editor, I didn't know anything about how to organize all this footage for a big production. And a lot of people were just very quick to jump in and show me how to do all of that. And I still think that's true.
I have a question for you. Do you feel like there's a difference between your New York team and your LA team?
Yeah, I think in New York it's a little harder to build the community, so people stay a little closer together. Whereas LA, it's kind of, the industry is so much
right.
And I find in New York too, people are always passing work to each other because you don't know when the next gig will happen.
Right. We'll say LA is very, like you said, it is where the industry is in a sense, and it can be overwhelming. And it's nice to come back. I come back to New York once a month for work, which has been so great. And seeing how New York works. I'm such a New Yorker in the sense that, we're pushing this product, we want to make it happen. You go, 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 and you go to LA, everyone's a little more lax over there. But I do agree with you that,
Yeah.
and I bet you in New York, everyone's looking for the next gig type of thing.
Yeah, and I think getting comfortable with freelancing is really helpful. I don't think it's, looking back on it, I was terrified of jumping into freelancing when I first graduated college. But after a while, it's really easy. And, if you're positive to work with and people enjoy bringing you on the projects, you'll always be getting fulfillment.
Of course, I'm going to say any questions for a moment.
Someone has to have a question.
Yeah, I mean-
don't believe it.
Oh, yay, okay, we have
Real,
questions.
When you talk about freelancing and you expand on your experience, and what was your process when you were freelancing?
Yeah, so my story is a little funny. I was living in Denver, and the TV station had done a round of layoffs, so I was kind of out of work for 6 months. And I started calling New York production companies and telling them I was in New York until one of them offered me an interview, and then I flew to New York for the interview. And I just pretended I lived in New York the whole time, because if I had told them I was willing to move from Denver, I felt like they would have been very scared and freaked out about hiring me. So I moved back from Denver to New York in 1 week, and I worked on this very crappy reality show. I was their overnight assistant editor. And I felt like being really, really flexible with things, like I was willing to work overnights. I was willing, at the time I was staying at a house in Staten Island, commuting like 2 hours to get to this job. I worked overnights, it was really great. And then at the very end of it, someone I worked with, because it was a 4-month contract, someone there was leaving to go work on another show, and they were like, hey, we need another overnight assistant editor on that show. So I went over there, and I did that for a while until I was able to leverage, I met somebody who was looking for a daytime assistant editor for less money. And like at that point, what I really wanted to do was have a normal life and sleep normal hours again. So I did that and kind of started freelancing, and you just keep meeting people, and people are always like dragging you onto the next show with them. And I did that until eventually I was like at the title I wanted to be at, and I was getting the kind of work I wanted.
Okay. So hello. So I'll take just a break from questions, have more in a moment. But if you're just tell everyone a little bit about introduce yourself, but also kind of what your path has been from purchase until now.
Hi, my name is Sheyla Navarro, and I was born in Peru. So I was an international student, and now I'm a US citizen. and I started purchase way a while ago, and but I discovered my passion for broadcasting television back in Peru, and they took many credits from my Peruvian school here, and I was able to graduate. And because of my experience in Peru, and because I had the opportunity to do an internship at a public access TV station, and I report on election night when I was an intern and a junior at Purchase. I put together an awesome reel, and I got an internship at CNN, and I was working there with Soledad O'Brien, John Berman, and the transition to the new show New Day with Chris Cuomo. And after that, my previous internship experience at LMCTV, is a small public access TV station. They offered me to create a new show from zero. And that show is called The Local Life. And right now we have produced over 200 episodes. And just recently on January 14, the whole community and public officials, like the mayor of the different municipalities, because we offer services to 3 communities, the Larchmont and Mamaroneck community and Rye Neck. And Westchester County and the New York State, they all decided that on January 14, it was going to be the Local Life Day because of the service that we provide teaching students and regular citizens to create the community news show. So it's been quite an experience, and now I've been there for 5 years, and now I'm just ready to go back to the networks, maybe go back to CNN. Actually, I wanted to apologize for being late here today. Actually, just got out of a job interview. So, yeah, I think it went pretty well. Yeah, so it's been great for me. I'm very happy. I got the chance to take a class with the famous Mary Alice Williams, and she was such a mentor. She really gave me the confidence that I needed, because when you are a student, especially not from this country, still trying to figure out learning everything in English and transitioning is very stressful, and your writing, everything is horrible, right? So you sometimes need those mentors that give you that confidence, that make you move forward. And I think I found that in her and in also Andrew Salomon, my favorite teacher.
Any audience questions? If not, I'm going to ask a question. So I actually have a question that isn't on this list. Because often I work with students and we hear titles like, I'm going to pick on Kyle, like Director of Communication. But they don't know what that means, you know?
Right.
So maybe I'll start with you, but then if the others could join in. Just like, so what would you say, what do you do in your job? If you had to tell someone briefly, like, this is what a Director of Communications does
Right.
at Comedy Central, what is it? So I'm going to start with you.
Well, I'll start off by saying that in the publicity world, there are more hoops to jump through than any other department in television that I've seen. You know, you start as an assistant, then you go to coordinator, and you go to junior publicist, senior publicist, manager, senior manager. They add so many levels. So what I do on my day-to-day is there is no day-to-day. You know, you can say, I'm answering emails all day. I'm available 24/7. Like, it's killing me that my phone's over there right now. I am literally on my phone all the time. So I have to pull myself away. You have to give yourself time. But what I do is, for example, I'm working with Drunk History right now. Do you guys know that show?
Oh, yeah.
So I'm with that talent and that cast, and we're working on promoting this season. So I've had them do a bunch of panels. I had them do late night. I had them on Seth Meyers the other day. I'm off pitching and booking, New York Times features and stuff like that. Going to lunch and dinners with reporters to kind of, schmooze a little bit, if you wouldn't mind me saying. But I am available 24/7 because news breaks. I'm the person who deals with all the Hollywood trades and any news that breaks on Comedy Central is coming from me. And I have to confirm it. I have to work with the president of Comedy Central to get quotes. And I could think I'm having a clear, easy day. Then 9 p.m. I could get, this is breaking, we need to get a quote. So I have to be on the phone left and right with a bunch of different reporters and stuff like that.
Anyone else willing to share?
Okay, so I have a very funny anecdote about titles. So, when you get out of college, you're really looking forward to just start working right away. And it's something that we all struggle. So when I was an intern at CNN, I was paying attention to everything happening. So as you said, there are many titles, right? Producer, assistant, anchor producer, line producer, senior producer, executive producer. So then when I was hired, my boss told me, what title do you want to have? and I was like, I don't know. I was very intimidated because they were just hiring me to create a news show that didn't exist. So I didn't even know that maybe the highest title was being the news director, right? And because when I was learning a little bit still, I was an intern back at CNN, at the moment the senior producer was in control of everything. So I was like, oh, I'm a senior news producer, and everybody senior, because definitely I was just a college graduate, so not really a senior, right, with past experience, but because my job really was doing everything, then I said, I think that sounds good, give me that title. But the thing is that at the end, it's funny because now that I am trying to move from where I am right now to another, maybe going back to the networks. When I went and I looked for what is an executive producer job description, is really what I do. So technically, I'm an executive producer, meaning that I really have the last say on everything that happens on the news show. So I start from zero, and then I decide what goes on the random, what are the stories, what stories I assign to reporters, what features, what is the topic, which guests we're bringing, booking, but we do really everything. And the reason that this is really kind of abnormal to what a real news show or news station or local station is that they only hire one person to create a news team, but there was no money to pay the news team. So it was like I was the reporter, the camera, the writer, the manager, and my job was really to talk to people like the way that I'm talking to you, and ask them, hey, so I'm doing this show, it's gonna be great, you wanna be part of it? And they were like, but show me what you're doing. And of course, it was still a pilot, a process. So there were times that I really had to work like every day until 3, 4 a.m., 5 a.m. until I built something that was super cool that people are like, oh, now I want to be part of it. And then I contact my former friends from Purchase, and I said like, hey, I need people, I need reporters, I need editors. And I create a small network, and pretty much everybody that was working for me until now, they're working for free. And they all work to produce their own reel. And it's insane that, that's why I'm telling you, it's a little bit difficult to explain, but I really don't have like a regular news job. I'm like a one-man show. I run the whole show, you know? So it's very challenging, but it is great because my youngest reporter is 12, and she's amazing. She's amazing. My other reporter is 70, and he's a pain. Yes, when I tell him, you know, I'm always constantly fighting with him and he's in the media. He's like a former teacher, so it's really trying to manage a group of people and trying to like teach them every day, you know. So it's very challenging, but it's very established now. So that's why now I'm ready to. Maybe one of you could take my job.
To piggyback off of what you said, I think having people report to you is such an intense pressure. You know, having a team that really relies on you and your decision, that can really.
Oh my God, it's insane.
It is.
It is insane. It's insane to really put a balance between your personal life and your work life, because what people don't teach you in the classrooms is that you're sending your resume and nobody is calling you. Nobody is really answering you, even though you like design it and it looks pretty and the paper is nice and you have all the internship. Sometimes people really don't call you. They really want to see your work. So if you're a student, you need to show your clip. So how am I going to make someone to hire me if I don't show something that I have produced? So pretty much everybody that works with me works for themselves because they want to show something to their future employer. So now I feel like an awesome resume that I'm like, here it is what I did. So now somebody else needs to take the lead. But it is really everybody that have worked with me right now, they're like at News 12, they're like at CBS, they're like at ABC. My recent intern, Christy Copiello, who's probably just graduating for us, right now, she right now is doing an internship at ABC7, and she's from Purchase, and she's great. So it is really about practicing and even you're like, you know, sometimes you have the dreams to, like my dream is to be at a press conference and face Donald Trump, right? But I cannot be there right away. You need to start for something small, like a small local place, a small public access station, have those articles published. And that doesn't happen when you are a senior or when you are a junior. I have an 11-year-old starting that. I have senior internship from high school. So my senior internship in high school, who I have him for 4 weeks, in those 4 weeks he learned to report, to edit, to film, to write. Now he's a freshman at Missouri, and no, I'm sorry, he's right now, not a freshman, wait, so next one I'm like, a sophomore, right? So he's a sophomore right now, he's like, he's publishing at the Columbia newspaper, from Columbia School, so it's insane. So that's the competition, and if you just wait until the last minute to like get your A game, you're going to like struggle more than the people that are doing that already. So yeah, so it's worth it to stay until 4 a.m. Yes, for me it did work, and now it's time to rest. Yes.
My role is interesting because I'm surrounded by a lot of titles. I'm surrounded by like managers and directors and VPs and all this stuff, but I'm just the curator. And what's sort of amazing about that is it's been incredibly malleable. At the core, what I do is decide what goes on the service. And that's everything from library films, older films, anything not new release, to our releases, our distribution, our premium titles. I'm going to TIFF and Sundance and Cannes and Berlin and any number of other genre festivals and seeing films and bringing them back and saying, you know, this is a Shudder movie, we should release this, here's why. To working with our development team and saying this could be a Shudder show, here's why. Reading scripts, giving notes, to working with the actual team that builds Shudder and saying, okay, if I didn't work here, I would be a Shudder subscriber, and here's where I think we're failing with the user experience. And obviously I don't know how to do those things, but I can say, I'd like to see it do this. I'd like to be able to search for this. I'd like to see this kind of art, and work with the teams, and then work with marketing, work with our press. I mean, I'm talent handling almost as much as a lot of our publicity because I'm front-facing a lot of ways other streaming services don't have. You don't see a lot of programmers for Netflix necessarily out there, and you can't maybe tweet at them and say, why did you put this movie, or why don't you have every Friday the 13th? And yet with Shudder, I'm there going, this is why. And that extends to our films. I'm the one that our filmmakers will come to and say, hey, I need this. When are you putting it out? Can we do this with the art? So it's interesting. I really am sort of like sitting in the middle and swiveling around to everyone in different ways. And it's great because I get to craft and shape in a lot of ways. We built a program called Shudder Labs that I got to head up, which is our Sundance Institute, if you will. There wasn't a sort of creative retreat for up-and-coming solely genre filmmakers. And we do it in upstate New York every year, and we pick 10 projects from new filmmakers who've only made shorts or maybe one micro-budget feature, and we bring them up there and we set them up with a bunch of mentors, everyone from sort of legendary New York indie horror filmmakers to studio folks. Mike Flanagan, who made Hush and Oculus and Gerald's Game, came this year and sat with everyone, and it was incredible. He was super generous with his time. And we hang out for 4 days in June, and we sit in like boats and talk about horror movies. It's very much sleepaway camp, and it's kind of amazing. So that it's nuts. I have a role that is, in a way, undefinable.
Yeah. So I'm an editor, which is probably the most traditional out of like these titles being thrown around. It hasn't changed that much, except I'm in a traditional newsroom. And so for me, I am the editor for the international team at Vice News, which means I do a lot of the stories that come out of Iraq or Syria or places like that, especially when like high conflict things are happening. What a day for me looks like is we'll have a team, like our biggest thing was we had a team in Mosul and they wanted to do a story every day. And so they would shoot for maybe 10 hours and they would send me, out of 10 hours, they'd send me like 3 hours and I would have like 10 hours to do that, find a story out of it and turn it around so it could air that same night. That was kind of the most extreme version of what I was doing though. A lot of the times it's, you know, you'll work with a team of people that'll produce something for like 5 or 6 days and I'll try to edit it all down to in like 3 days to have it ready for air. And that's everything from, you know, watching down all of this media to figuring out who are like who are the characters that best tell the story of what you're trying to do. So it could be a refugee story and like, you know, someone who's trying to reunite with their kids or their partner. It could be, you know, a story about a drug raid and someone who is maybe like someone in the Philippines who was like affected by Duterte's new policy for kind of imprisoning people for low-level crimes. So you'll find out who those characters are, and you'll start to kind of build scenes out of it. It's more of a traditional documentary style in that sense. And so you'll watch it all down, and you'll kind of like build scenes of people interacting with each other. You'll have to find music to pair with it. We have a really, really great music producer, and Vice has just actually started bringing composers in, which is kind of a treat, because you can kind of tell them what you're doing with a scene and explain what you wanted to do, and you can just send it to someone and they'll send you all these different music options, and you could say like, I need it to be like 30 seconds longer, or like, I need it to be like really droney or like wavy or something, and they'll just like send it to you again and again and again. But yeah, it's kind of, you know, after the third day, you're kind of locking it all together, and you know, you'll have something that's about 7 or 8 minutes, and then that'll go into the control room, where a whole different team of people will be working on getting it ready to like stack in with different stories that'll make one episode.
Great. Any questions?
You guys all seem to have jobs that sort of span the like, well, you've got streaming and then you have more traditional news media sort of coverage. And I was wondering how you guys feel working in this field that's like kind of redefining itself right now as like, I don't know, like Vice is both like on TV and also like very online. How do you, I don't know, like it seems very intimidating to sort of pick a side there, or do you feel like you have to pick a side, or how do you work in this field that's just always changing?
Go for it.
It's interesting because I think, you know, for instance, Shudder, we're maybe the most new or most at the forefront of a lot of this stuff, but a lot of our ethos is sort of to be in the middle and to be somewhere between a streaming service and a video store. Our whole idea is to feel curated, to feel like handcrafted. Like you could reach out and touch us, talk to me, I could tell you why we're putting something on the service. So, but at the same time, we're very much at this new form of distribution where things will come straight to us. And it's not bad in a way that the term direct-to-video once was, you know, where you used to see a movie and go, okay, why is this only a blockbuster, or why did this sequel only come straight to video? So it's interesting seeing that being redefined and being able to be at the forefront and think about it in a way of, well, what now works better as streaming? You know, if I go see something at a festival, I'll go, oh, this is suited for home consumption. And it doesn't necessarily have to do with the filmmaking or how big it is, but I have to reconfigure my brain of like how people are gonna watch that. Are they gonna get bored? Are they gonna turn off? Or are they gonna be super engaged? How quick does it move? So a lot of I've had to reconfigure my thinking of films a lot in the sense of that, of what is the audience gonna like and why, and how are they most consuming it? Are they watching it on their phone? Are they watching it off of Roku or PlayStation or something like that? Do they watch it on their laptop? It just gives you a lot more to think about, but it's kind of fun in that way. And we've also been lucky enough to embrace a lot of traditional release strategy too, whereas, you know, we might be in the middle of something like Netflix or Amazon, where Amazon will buy a movie and still work with a theatrical partner and give it a more traditional release. Netflix won't. Netflix essentially buys only the rights for streaming, but pays enough that it is sort of excluding everyone. They're basically buying out those other releases. Whereas we will work with a theatrical partner, or we'll take all rights and release it ourselves, give it a week run. We're really trying to find what the happy medium is, and I think that's what's going to be going forward is, you know, not excluding one way, not excluding the other, understanding what works best from both sides, and that's what the new, I think, avenues of distribution will look like. Because it's fun. It's very like, all right, we'll try it. We'll see what happens. That's cool.
To piggyback what you said, no one's consuming television the way they used to. So they're not consuming movies the way they used to. So, you know, we're in this time, pardon me, where technology really is taking over. So we're trying to find our footing. I know Comedy Central specifically is trying to find their footing to compete with the Amazons and the Netflix. You know, it's very hard when, you know, you talk about Netflix buying things out, having Netflix money. Yeah. That's almost unheard of. Netflix money is in Hollywood is known as this mecca where you can have whatever you want. You can do whatever you want.
Yeah, I'd always be curious to your take, because I feel like with a network, something like Comedy Central, so many shows end up being discoverable on Netflix. So it's almost like you're not necessarily even making them specifically for live air anymore.
Right.
People are watching them in the app, people are time shifting, and then eventually they might wait to watch the whole season on Netflix, and how does that affect programming strategy, all that kind of stuff?
Right. We used to care about same-day ratings. That was our thing. Ratings, same day. That's out the window. I mean, no one is watching live TV anymore. It's grown to live plus 3, so 3 days later. But it's really hard to capture that in terms of the Nielsen, world, because nobody's watching it on their television. Nobody's DVRing really anymore. Do you guys have cable? I don't even have cable. I work in cable. So, it's an interesting time, especially for these networks who don't have Netflix, Amazon money, to really find a way to showcase and get talent and keep their talent. To be honest, Comedy Central's come under a lot of fire lately in terms of talent leaving to go to Netflix. It's very hard to compete. Like Amy Schumer doing her latest special on Netflix, even Trevor Noah doing a special on Netflix. That has been, detrimental to us. But we're there to grow them, to help them grow as people and as comedians. But we want to keep them at the same time. But how do you do that in a world where Netflix and Amazon produce great content, but have the money to back that up? So that's been an interesting issue that I've been.
Okay, so I'm a little bit confused regarding your question, because we're talking about streaming on Netflix, or you mean like about social media, how that changed the way our reporting and the way that we set our news agenda?
Yeah, I guess, how do you manage being in an industry that's in so much change right now?
Okay.
And,
Got it.
yeah, especially as news
Okay,
producers.
I've been doing a lot of thought actually about it these 2 last weeks. This really, okay, so, I remember, I was the generation, definitely the generation that did not have a computer. so for me, I definitely am obsessed with technology. But what I noticed is that before, there was not a job of a social media producer. Right now, if you go and do some search, social media producer everywhere. Everybody needs to know everything on social media, right? And what is interesting to me is that, I'm a little bit of I don't like, for example, Snapchat, okay? And putting myself in, I don't like to be the center of attention. I want the people that I'm interviewing, that they are the story. So as a journalist, I want them to say a story instead of me being like, hey, look at me and do this. However, the audiences are different, because you have like a senior citizen versus like a 13-year-old or a 15-year-old. So we cannot close our minds to how the media is evolving. I think we have to constantly be adapting ourselves, and we have to be smart about it. Because if somebody is really just, posting and doing a funny video just to get followers, doesn't mean that I have to do the same way. But I could be smart about it. I could really have like a different kind of post on Snapchat, and maybe like show like a small clip of a documentary, or like a soundbite that is, oh wow, I want to click at the link and then watch the rest of the video. So I think it's kind of like we have to adapt ourselves. And I think like many people really get frustrated when they don't get the jobs right away. And the generation of the millennials are the people that don't wait, are the people that want things now. I don't want to, intern for 3 months and wait. No, you want now. So you want the now, you have to create your own media. If you already know how to write, if you already know how to film, if you already know how to edit, don't wait until your assignment editor is going to tell you, I think you should do this story. I think we as journalists have to be brave and have like that eye that when we are like walking around, we could pick up those stories and I feel like, oh, that's a story. That story is a story that is going to make an impact, whether national, local, or like international, and then use the technology, the social media platform to make that impact. But if it depends if you have different goals. Because even in entertainment, you know, right now when somebody's hiring you, they're looking how many Instagram followers you have, how many Twitter followers you have. Before, we didn't have to worry about that. And it definitely puts a lot of pressure because you're doing so much that it's so hard to keep up. But I think that if you have the time to work on yourself, especially while you are studying, and pretty much do it at your own pace and being smart about it, it will be like a great tool for you because it will give you it will give you that spotlight in a good way. It will give you the spotlight for the recruiters that want someone like you, someone creative, that nobody told them to do that, but they came with their own initiative to start their own project.
Yeah, I can add to that. So for me, I think that, you know, in media, places have to be very flexible. Vice News puts everything out in a lot of different formats. So it'll air, because it's an HBO show, first it'll air on HBO. And they've been really, really great. They've started to open up more about what they put online. So like we can take individual segments and separate them. Because most people who are watching online the next day might not want to watch 3 different segments if they just wanted to watch a story of like, click on this one particular thing. They're also really good about, so we all worked on the Charlottesville documentary, which was kind of like a big thing for Vice News.
It's amazing.
And thank you.
It was amazing.
And they immediately, like HBO saw, like we kind of told them what was going on and they immediately put it online at the same time because they just understood different pieces of media circulate in different ways. They've also been really good with like John Oliver's show. The next day the whole thing goes up on YouTube. As an editor, I don't work on web media. And I think the reality is it still just pays significantly less than traditional broadcast media. And so if you're looking at jobs that in terms of like producing or writing or editing or anything like that where you're not necessarily in front of the camera or talent or anything like that, that was something that was important for me. I think places that are flexible with what, like a place like Vice News where they'll put it online is really helpful because it doesn't feel like this kind of dinosaur outlook on what TV is, and that, you know, TV is always changing. But also, this is a very interesting time for internet media because there's less ad money than there used to be. And I don't think anyone has like figured out, like it's still very rocky right now, whereas broadcast is much more stable.
Sorry, I thought while everyone was talking about what I was talking about, one of the things that I think has been interesting with streaming is I feel like it's forcing everyone to step up their game with what they greenlight. One of the advantages of streaming services is more adventurous viewers. When you subscribe to a service and it's not an explicit transaction of what you're renting, you'll see viewers give more things a chance. It allows us to take more risks on what we program. And that's everything from sort of super out there stuff. Last year we released a movie called Kuso, which was amazing. It premiered at Sundance, but immediately had notoriety for having an insane amount of walkouts because it's very transgressive, very gross, very body horror, very experimental. But because it had that hype and people were curious about it, if they had a subscription to Shudder, it wasn't like, I'm going to spend this much money to rent it. They were totally down to watch it. And it's the same with a lot of subtitled stuff. You know, there are a lot of distributors that stay away from foreign language films or foreign language series because, you know, they know people will just want to rent English language content. I think you see that, the same thing with Netflix. People are watching shows from other countries. Same with Shudder. We have a lot of really cool horror shows from Scandinavia, from all these places. And so that's been one of the cool things about distribution and streaming is you just get to take a little bit more of a chance with what you bring to the service. So if you really believe in something, you can fight for it a little bit. And I think creators can come to us with stuff that's a little bit more out there, a little bit cooler, a little bit more provocative because you might get more viewers out of it.
Any questions? Oh, sorry.
I have a question just in regards to editing, because social media and streaming, since we're talking about that. Do you feel like you have to change your style of editing? Because I know that you said that you reference a lot of your cinema studies background and movies that you see when you edit the news pieces. But do you feel like you have to change or, you know, quicken up the editing, or
No, I mean, I am lucky that I don't really deal too much. Like, I'll cut things and they might get repackaged for Snapchat or Instagram videos or something like that. And knowing what those formats are, like, there's definitely a lot of tutorials. And we'll have a social person come in and say, hey, this is Instagram, so like it's best if it's like 30 seconds or less, and it's got to be, like the term they use for it is vertical video editing, so it would be kind of that one instead. And so they'll kind of talk about like how do you use that space, and like when vertical editing was kind of like first around, the idea was like they would do a little box, and then there was like what's above it and what's below it, and then like in the past year or so, like they've seen it as like you just have to use the whole screen. So typically with anything like that, and it's the same as like working on a new show or you know Instagram or whatever it is, you just look at like what's successful and what they want out of it, and like you know anytime I start working on a new show, I'll do a deep dive through things that they want it to look and feel like, and so I'll try and develop a style that's similar to what they want.
So we probably have time for one or two more questions. We want to give enough time for you guys ask like individual. I would have to get some individual just networking and small group networking time. But yeah.
So like aside from content, what do you think is like the key to keeping viewers or subscribers like interested and engaged in what you're doing?
I guess I'll start. Talent. I keep talking about talent. If you're nurturing talent, you've got these new voices and something. You know, we're in an age right now where you know, we're really pushing women, people of color, LGBT, all these different stories, and getting that out there and finding, you know, giving people voices. I think engaging fans and doing the research on what they're looking for, what they want. We do a ton of research on every show. We go to all different areas of the United States and have people at focus groups watch these shows, and we get information out of them, what they're looking for, what they thought of that pilot, what they think our pilot should be more like, and stuff like that. So that also helps us engage with our fans.
For us, it's really maintaining a level of communication. I mean, just coming from being like a kid who loved horror and growing up in the horror community and that whole world, I know that no one who loves the genre or no one who loves genre in general wants to feel like something they support is like soulless. So for Shudder, it's not only important to say, hey, we have great stuff, we have great films, we have great series, but also, you know, you can talk to us, you can reach out to us, you can see who we're working with, you can see what we're doing to work with the talent. You know, we're out there with the talent, we're at festivals, we're at conventions. It's about being a community as much as it is about being distributional, I think.
Yeah, I also think it's about respecting your audience's time.
Yep.
You know, Vice, I think, has been great about, you know, do segments longer than what they need to be. You know, we can go all the way to Germany to do a story and justify it being just a 3-minute story. You know, it's only so long as it needs to be. There's a lot of media out there you can watch. You can get the news from literally anywhere, but we're going to try and keep it short and just pass it off.
So I guess I have an advantage in terms of my competition because I produce the only hyper local news show of a small community. So if they will watch News 12 or Files, they always find stories from, you know, a little bit of everywhere in Westchester County. But if they watch my show, they know that it's going to be just about specifics about our community. So for us, we do not have ratings. It's very hard to really define it by a number, but the best way to define it is we have a segment that is a live panel discussion segment where people can call and they could email or tweet. And recently, right now, it is streamed on Facebook, streaming live on Facebook. So if we see the comments and the questions and the phone calls arriving, then that's a success for us. If nobody's calling or tweeting or anything about it, it's really bad. Like, I really like the best show that we produced. It was when we wrote like a medium that could communicate with the dead, and it was like insane how many people love those kind of shows. Because we do from politics to, you know, entertainment, a little bit of like everything. Definitely one of the best shows that we produced was like Charlottesville's reactions. We actually used a little bit of the viewer documentary advice, and millennials were really talking and discussing about the Ronda reaction. So it depends on choosing the right topic at the right moment, and that could be very, very tricky. If there would be more budget in my department, I would do exactly that, try to focus in some kind of a study about my audience. But so far, those are like, pretty much like the best way to know if our audience is following. It's like watching like the comments, the Facebook comments, the phone calls, the tweets. And it's fun because it's such a small community, when we are in the streets and they see us filming, they're like, oh, is this going to be on the lookalike? And we're like, yeah, okay. And they and yeah, so, and also, something that before like finishing is, when we do, for example, the small stories on features on businesses or on persons or non-for-profits, there are organizations that already have like an amount of followers. So if I do a story about it, many people are going to be interested about that specific business, non-profit, person, local business. So it is a little bit of trying to make a strategy of how to get those followers liking you. Because once you do like 1 billion, they're like loving that. They're gonna keep clicking and clicking to keep liking more videos on the action.
Well, you might be asking this.
Oh, no.
If you could give one sort of final advice to just the students, what kinds of things, or maybe one thing that you could share with the students to sort of think about, reaching out and connecting, and what would you do if you were at this point? What kind of advice would you give our students as they move forward?
Okay, so let me start, sorry. Something that as an international student that I was able to observe and compare, it definitely stands, it's based on money. Because it's very expensive to really get a lot of extra classes that you could take to be a better professional. Back in Peru, on my curriculum, I had the whole creative Adobe suite included on my program. So I learned Photoshop, Illustrator, InDesign, everything that you could imagine, and that was part of my program. So, and I forgot about it because I did it such a long time that when I came here to purchase, if I wanted to take those classes, I have to probably pay more, and I didn't have the means to pay for it. So I felt a little bit frustrated about that. But also, there's not always money to even get a master's degree. And sometimes you have to like study and work at the same time. Not everybody comes from like a very rich family. But there are resources out there that you could use to really improve yourself. I am always on YouTube like crazy looking at those when those famous journalists come to Harvard or whatever, and just like looking and learning from all these. That's like my master's degree for me. That's like the best way to learn from me. And there are many YouTube tutorials. I learned a student from Purchase, who's a really good friend of mine, that he taught himself Photoshop, Adobe Premiere, InDesign, After Effects, Illustrator, Adobe Audition, and I hired him to be part of my team with the small budget that I have. And I was like, how can you learn all that by yourself? I mean, it takes a lot of dedication, but if you don't have the means, that's definitely like a good way. The public access TV stations like that are everywhere are like a free resource for you. Because when you take an editing class here at Purchase, they don't sit right next to you one-on-one and tell you this is how you go and cut everything, because there's no time to do it. And there are not many TV classes available. But at a public access TV station, these classes are offered for free. So you could learn how to edit, you could learn how to do camera and all of those things for free. And when you have the knowledge, then you could have the whole, all the tools for you to create your own thing, to have that initiative to make your way up little by little up there.
I would definitely say take risks and surprise yourself. I mean, I was working at Chartwell 7 years ago, and I picked up and I said, I'm 24 and a half, if I don't do this, I'm never doing this, and I needed to go. And I did, and it worked out, and I think, you know, sometimes, no matter what, the risk works out, because you're either going to learn from it, or it's going to help you in your career, or in your personal life, or whatever it is. It was the best move I made, and because I picked myself up and left, that's what happened. I recommend taking these risks. Surprise yourself.
I would say, like, find a very good balance between making your goals and intentions clear, but also not being too rigid with them, because so much of my experience has been sort of going with certain flows, knowing where I wanted to end up, but really just saying yes to opportunities, saying yes to collaborations, making friends that you're going to work with. I think a lot of times, especially in media and entertainment, you hear a lot of things about like, it's all who you know, connections and stuff like that. And in some ways that's true, but there can be a very cynical outlook on that and a very positive outlook on that. You're going to make friends in this industry. I mean, especially me, I'm at festivals, I'm at markets, I'm seeing the same people all the time, and we all are interested in the same stuff. And it's not a cynical thing, it's we all want to work together, we want to collaborate together. If we weren't good at what we were doing, or we were not great people, I'm sure we wouldn't be friends. But that, of course, leads to opportunities, it leads to recommendations, it leads to all these things. So, you know, just find your pack in the industry you want to work with and be open to opportunities, because it's going to lead you to surprising places. Something like a niche streaming service didn't exist, I think, 4 or 5 years ago. So when I was starting out in, I guess, like the workforce, I didn't know. Shudder wasn't a thing. It wasn't a thing I knew I could do. And it turned out to be the best thing. It turned out to be the coolest thing I could do. So just kind of go with the flow while also knowing where you want to end up. I know it's like floating up there. It's not practical. Hopefully it helps.
And I think similar to what Kyle said, like you have to take risks. You know, I cold called companies for jobs. I got a fake phone number that was a New York area code, and I convinced everyone that I still lived in New York. I gave a fake address. I, you know, just showed up to networking events because there was one person at a company I wanted to work for who was showing up. It was a lot of detective work. It was a lot of figuring out what I wanted to do and convincing people that had no interest in helping me to help me out. And I think it's a really great industry. I think it's a really friendly industry. When people call me up now and they ask me to work on jobs that I can't take, I try really hard to get people that I like those jobs. And likewise, you know, like people want to help each other and they'll help you get the job you want. You know, that's kind of the energy you put out there with the people you work with.
Yeah, I would say most of the time people are kind and supportive, and they want to help, especially if you work in some sort of media or arts field. I mean, especially so much of us are looking for, you know, especially in the realm of talent, like what the next wave is going to be. You know, we can't close ourselves off, so we want to hear from new, young, exciting artists. Like we want to hear from people who want to work in this industry. So I would say, like, don't be shy.
No.
Please reach out to people and say, hey, I would love to know more about this thing. You know, even if there's not an internship available, can I have a coffee with you? Can I hang out with you? Can I hear about what you do? Because most of the time, I think people are going to say yes. I mean, you might run across someone who's no, but like, you know, whatever.
Yeah. No one talks to
They're like-
vendors. So like when someone hits me up for coffee, I'm very surprised, and I'm always willing to help them talk to somebody.
I also think it's important to say you treat the janitor the same way you treat the president of the company.
Yeah, of course.
You know, if you, I have come in contact with a plethora of people who, you know, might have been lower on the chain or above the chain, and roles have reversed. You know, there are layoffs that happen there. You never know just be a good person.
Yeah.
Just put yourself out there as a good person. Be that good person. Be that person that people want to hire. Be that person that people want to be around.
So on that note, with don't be shy and take opportunities, we want to end now because we want to give you the chance to kind of get up and mingle and take your opportunity. And just even if you're just introducing yourself, asking a question you don't want to ask in front of everyone, having a small group conversation, don't miss your opportunity. But before we do that, I really just want to thank you all for being here. Thank you so much.
Something that I forgot to mention, I know I've been talking a lot about my public access TV station, but the producer of La La Land started at my public access TV station. And yes. And he came back and he gave like when the whole scandal with the Moonlight, and he didn't win, and he didn't want anyone to see his face because he started with us. He was the one who gave us that one-on-one interview, and you know, and he really remembered with so much love that was his beginning. So definitely like
That's really cool.
yeah.
Right, exactly, beginnings. A lot of people have beginnings in many different places. So before you guys start talking, I just want to let you know there are evaluations on the table. You can fill them out after you have your conversations. And also, until tonight, if you like purchase CDC on Instagram, there are these little things here talking about social media, you're entered into a contest to win a Starbucks gift card. But you really want to follow us because that's where we post all of our events and information that's important.
You've gotten pretty good at social media too.
So please, everyone, there's some more food. Please take your opportunity now and say hello.